My name's Cyndi Masters. I'm an alcoholic. Because of the grace of God, some simple actions in this program, and both sides of sponsorship, I've been sober every single day in a row since December the 17th, 1985, and for that, I'm extremely grateful. It continues to be the biggest deal in my life. Boy, what a great day so far. I'm full. I can go home. You know, what I find fascinating is it's like, you step 2 and step 3, it's like we're taught, and then you get to 4 and 5 and you think, well, they've already talked about the God steps, but what are 4 and 5 about? But everything about God. And then you get to 6 and 7 and it becomes the manifestation of 3. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but there's no amen at the end of the 3rd step prayer. It happens at the end of the 7th step prayer. I consider it a continuous prayer. And it's a lifetime prayer for me. So 8 and 9, I'm going to kind of just go through how I go through that, and I've gone through that a million different ways, all of them out of the book, nothing not out of the book. And then I'm going to share some stories with the process for me that are personal to me. So the A step, it says we've made the list in inventory, and we've, written down where are we to blame, right? And for me, there were also some things by the time I got to the A step that didn't make inventory. It didn't have resentment in connection with it. It didn't hit my fear list, and it wasn't on my sexual inventory. But they were things that when I would go to the mall and that person would be there, I'd turn around and go the other way. And why? Because I had done something that was embarrassing, that I had harmed somebody else, but I had no resentment with them in connection with it, because sometimes I hurt people without them doing a darn thing, and I didn't manipulate it in my brain to make it their fault. And so it was important that those hit my A-step list. Now, the way that I started doing this many years ago, when we go through this the first time, is we do cards. And so we put each name on an index card. And the reason that I do that is the first thing that I do is I write down their contact information on the other side. Now, back then, we didn't have the internet and all these things, right? You couldn't just go find somebody on Facebook. And so I write their name, I write the harm I did, so that I'm not confused about what I'm amending. And then their contact information's there. There's no excuse not to make the amend. So I do that with everybody. And then they go into a right now category. Right now, I am ready. I have prayed, and I am ready to make amends to these people. They go into a later, and then they go into a never category. Why is the never category important? I'm still praying to become willing with the never. It doesn't mean I don't pray to be willing, because that's what the step says. It says become willing, and I pray to be willing for those that I'm not ready yet to do. And I'm going to tell you about one of those amends that didn't happen until I was 17 years sober. I did not make the last amends from my first A step list until I was 17 years sober. And it's a darn good thing. Because had I made that amend 1 minute sooner, I had a chance to retaliate in the process, and I would have done more damage than I did amend. See, an amend isn't to run and apologize, right? An amend is to make right. That's why in the big book it has these stories. My favorite one is of the guy, like he totally took this guy's reputation out. And for him to own it, oh my gosh, he was going to maybe embarrass his whole family and cost them their reputation in the community. And he was willing to throw himself on the sword, but he needed to ask his family, because he was going to drag them on that sword with him. And were they okay with being dragged on the sword, right? It's the same thing, like with the guy with the child support. Yes, he owes us, and he may go to jail, but he also has a family he has to support now. So how do you approach this in a way that I make it right for everybody? And so an amend is to make right. The reason why we, in my opinion, Should never ever make amends until we get to this step and have the guidance of a sponsor. It's not an amend, it's a purge. When I don't have a sponsor, I feel guilty and ashamed, and I want to be free, and so I puke on you what I did to you. And again, it does more damage than good. Sometimes with my gals, we practice. What does this look like? We practice because it's scary. Here's the easiest amend you'll ever make. Write a check. Easiest amend you'll ever make. Write a check. Those are easy. And to be honest with you, my first 10 years, my amends were the best I could do at the time, and that's all God asked of us. But compared to the kind of amend I make when I foul up now, it was very shallow. But it was the very best I could do, and it was enough. And that's what we get. That's what grace is. See, none of these steps did I do them the way I do them now. And when I would look and I would get better, so I grow spiritually, right? And I go look at the fourth step, I'd be like, oh, I didn't, it's like, yes, I did. And what's the evidence? I'm sober and I've gotten better enough to see what I didn't, what I couldn't afford to see. What I couldn't afford to see. 6 and 7. Most of the speakers, they talk about being later in recovery before we ever get that. Because we have to get spiritually well enough to be able to afford to see all of that. The glass ceiling of humanness is painful. I want it to get there, and there is just getting better and continuing to grow and being willing to continue to do things like make amends. For me, this is the freedom step. Now, what amends that I do not believe I should make if it's going to cause harm to others? If I have not forgiven the person. Because the hardest amend to make for me has been the one where I'm 5% wrong. And I'm going to describe one of those in a minute. But I still have to amend my fault and only look at my fault. But if I have not forgiven the 95%, it is going to be disastrous. So for me, I mentioned this last night. I was 17 years sober. I'd had this highway motorcycle accident, and then I had cancer. And then when I was a little kid, I got kicked through doors, and my back was broken. And so the accident exacerbated the break and shoved my spine forward, and I had to have this big surgery. And I have lots of trauma, and so the trauma was triggered. I'm in a hospital bed. I'm vulnerable. I'm on medication. That's what it is when it's in the hospital. It's called medication. I still respond horribly to it, and so all of a sudden I'm a nut job. Like the slideshows turned back on. See, I had found relief and recovery. When I got here, I had a slideshow of every terrible thing that had ever happened to me. Click, 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 click. And I got peace. And now this is all, and it's like I just see everything that happened, like all the things that got through at my back, kicked in the back, all those things. And it's like click, click, click. I'm laying in a hospital bed. And I call my sponsor and I say, I don't know how I'm going to live like this. I don't know how I can live with this again. And he said, oh, don't worry, Cyndi. This was the worst thing I ever heard. We'll do some forgiveness work. I mean, that did not seem like the solution to all that trauma, right? It's not something I looked forward to, but we did. And the evidence that I did the forgiveness work, that I truly reached a place of forgiveness, was that I went to make amends to the man that broke my back. Now, I had nothing to do with him breaking my back, and I had nothing to do as a little child, all the different kinds of things that happened that shouldn't happen to a little child. It's part of the reason why I love all the little kids. You know what I mean? It was angels and moments of people giving me a hug or people recognizing me, that I believe just fed that little spirit enough to hang in the game. And And I still have some of those memories, which is fantastic. So I went to make the amends for what I did with what he did to me. See, what I did was I blamed him for my adult self. I blamed him for my identity. When somebody would say something nice about him, and by the way, the most painful thing to remember has been all the nice things about him, which there are, because I had him as my identity. That trauma was my identity. And so to go and approach these other things and have compassion for the way he was raised, things like that, that was part of my forgiveness process. And so I said, Daddy, I said, I'm so sorry that I misspoke about you, and that I harmed your reputation. And then I said what I was taught to do here when I make an amends. I was wrong, and I want to make it right. And, one of the ways I'm going to do that is I'm going to talk positively about you, and I'm going to own my lane. I said it differently, but that's the gist of what I said. And I said, if there's anything else that I'm not remembering or I'm unaware of that I've done to harm you, I want to know. And see, this is the hard part of an amend, because guess what? I didn't get to retaliate. I have to sit and listen. Here's what he said. My cousin had, ironically, uniquely, God has great timing, had gone to my dad a couple months before and confronted him about a camping trip where my dad beat me with an extension cord until I bled in front of all the family members. And my cousin went and confronted him about that and some other things. I don't know. I didn't. But my dad said, Cyndi, I have no memory of this. I believe that my dad has different personalities inside of him, because there are some parts of him that are amazing, and he never remembered anything, and all I ever wanted was for him to remember and apologize just once. And he said, your cousin confronted me about this, and I want you to know I'm so deeply ashamed. I can't imagine doing that, but I believe him, and I'm so sorry. And he said, and if there's, he repeated my words, he said, if there's anything else that I've done to harm you, let me know. Well, lock and load, baby. I've been waiting my whole life to let you know what you did to me. You know what I mean? If I had made this amend 1 minute earlier, it would have been disastrous. But because I truly have forgiven him, what I was able to say is, that was a long time ago. And you know what? I love you. See, I treated him like I treat you, because a far better example lies in our daily lives, not what we do in these rooms. Our families, our businesses. How am I behaving there? And so I treated him the way you taught me to treat you. And I've had a pretty good relationship with him since. Right now, my dad just got out of the hospital with COVID. He blows up, he's volatile, he's not an alcoholic. He's very damaged, he's very wounded, and if we don't shoot our wounded in AA, why are we gonna do it in our families? See, if I can take a newcomer that's hostile, that's done terrible things to their family, and I can just say, I love you, and God loves you, and it's gonna be okay, just take this path we take, why can't I do it with my family? Because that's why I learned to do it here, so I can go do it there. He still reacts. He still can be very mean to my mom. And that's painful to watch. And painful for somebody like me that rescued my siblings and feels like I have to protect people, to be able to let them have their own journey that they've made a choice about, and not have to go in and protect, and just love them both. But I had to get enough maturity in recovery, emotional and spiritual maturity. Bill Wilson talks about, a lot of this that happens later in recovery. So here's the good news. If you're brand new, God doesn't, and we don't, need you to do more than you can, but God doesn't make too hard of terms of those that seek him. So you're not going to have to do something that you can't do until it's time to do it, like my amend to my dad. See, I had to, that donut in the hole in the donut that talks about the 6th and 7th step, right? That was my big fear. I was a walking wound, and if I let go of that identity, then I wouldn't be a person. I would disappear, and I would have no value. I didn't have an education. I didn't have anything else that gave me value, but my big traumatic stories gave me an identity. And so I had to get well enough that I had another identity, if that makes sense. Today, I'm the freest woman I know. Because of this step. I've watched people come in with less baggage that are not nearly as free. I'm not mad about nothing. I still don't have that greatest skill set on the planet for navigating life. But I got these steps, and I always know what to do when I misnavigate, Some of the harder amends for me have been ones that I have had to make in recovery. I've been sober a very long time. And I've hurt more people sober than I hurt drinking, because I've been sober longer than I drank. And the shame I feel, which this is a shame-based disease, I believe, that thing that's like, I can't go back there because they know. What I'm really saying is I can't go back there because they know I'm human. When I had the wreck, I was on lots of medication, and I had a new traumatic brain injury. And so I had all filters removed. And you guys, they had to make new regulations. They thought I was a celebrity. It was like crazy. And all you did was come, you took care of me. You heard that. And you would come, and apparently I would throw you out. And then I would call crying because you weren't there. See, that's insanity, right? It's the insanity that I knew when I was drinking. And now I'm treating my sober community, sponsees, my peer-to-peer relationships, I'm treating you like this. And I don't even know I've done it. That's worse. It's like when you're a blackout drinker, only I'm sober. It hurts my heart. It still hurts me. I don't like to hurt people. I have to pay more attention to hungry, angry, lonely, tired than anybody I know, because my filters physically are artificial, because you guys taught me how to do that by teaching me how to be a newcomer, and that's what does it for me. I put those things in place. But making those amends, they just hurt to my soul. Unfortunately, I'm quite practiced, and I don't need to make them so much now. But I went through a 6-year period where I lived far more days in a hospital than out. And that medical trauma did not make me my best spiritual self. That's not an excuse. It's a reality. But guess what? The only way I got to get better was to be responsible, sober, no matter the reason. And that's hard. It's painful. My next, really challenging thing, my mom didn't hardly make my resentment list because I didn't care. I disregarded her. When children's service would come to our house, she'd lie. When my dad would be volatile, she'd put me in front of her. And I really didn't want nothing to do with her. I felt like she had a choice in the matter, and I felt like my dad did not. So my dad got a pass because I could see how sick he was, and I didn't give my mom a pass because I had no compassion for her. And so I just wrote her off. She found out I had cancer like 9 months after I was into chemo, you know, from somebody else. You know, it, it, and that's, I'm not proud of that, but that was my reality. I didn't know it was an issue because it never made a four-step. Never made a four-step because I wasn't mad. I didn't care. My brother was murdered in 2010. He's my Irish twin, 9 months younger than me. And you grow up in a place like we grow up, right? You get very bonded, and then boy, did I love him. And two things happened with this amends thing when that happened. This is in 2010. One is my dad was an idiot because he can't deal with feelings. He can't deal with feelings. And so some of my feelings about my dad, see, I'd made this amend, I was free, and then I got a little mad at my dad again. And so I had to go. But that was a beautiful thing. And I could take care of that in the step 11. I could take care of that in that inventory. I didn't have to for that one because I was very present and very current during that. I didn't get mad at the guy that murdered him. I immediately went to compassion and prayed for him and his family, which was a miracle because I'm a street kid and I know how to get even, but I'm not a scorekeeper today. And that's a miracle. My sponsor always tells me, go show God off. And that's what this is. It's like somebody like me doesn't need to go after somebody like that. That's a miracle. My mom looked the way I'd never seen her look when my brother was murdered. She hurt to her toes. She just was like void of herself. And the guilt, I saw the guilt. I saw the shame. I had never seen her as a person. And, I hated it for her. And in that moment, I just loved her. See, if I can see you, which is part of why when my girls come and tell me about their childhoods, right? I ask them to tell me about their parents' childhood. Because if I can see you, it changes everything. And so I made a commitment on that day. And my dad, he can't. Like, I accept he can't. But my mom was sad for 2 weeks, and he screamed and said, you're not allowed to cry anymore, and you're not allowed to grieve because he can't. And I'm so blessed I have my whole library of feelings because of you. I can cry. I can feel. You know, I didn't think I wanted any of those things. I was trying so hard not to have those things, and you gave it to me. And you gave me the ability to see it in her. And I made a commitment that I was going to do everything I could. I could see like what had happened with her. She'd been more stuck than me. And she had been more lonely. And so amends require compassion. Amends require not just seeing what is my fault, but also really having compassion for the harm I did to you. It is no longer about me. This is what separates us. It is now truly about you and me being selfless and coming to you to try to heal what damage. I hurt my mom so many times because I just didn't care anymore. And I had so many different people, because I was in the system, that supported that. I had a therapist that would just sit and cry and hold me. You know, it's like, groovy when you're a little kid. Not groovy if you want to have a good life. Not groovy if I want to be full participant in life in Alcoholics Anonymous. 3 months later, this is the longest I've ever been out of a hospital. I haven't been inpatient. I had to have infusions, I think, last month. But other than that, I haven't been in the hospital a couple years. But for a long time, because medical problems beget medical problems, so I had 18 inches of my colon removed and I got septic because I always get all the extra stuff. And, and my brother had just been murdered, and so I'm in the hospital and my mom comes and she's holding my hand. She turned 70 while I'm there. It's Christmas time. And she's holding my hand. She said, please don't die. I can't take it. She might be a little self-centered. It was kind of about her, but that may be why I lived. But see, here's where real amends for me comes in. It's not that moment where I calm and I own what I've done. It's when I spend my life trying to make it right. And so the next year, and my mother, I'd never seen so much. We become sensitive as we get sober. Like with a newcomer, I can feel you. I feel you. I'm connected with God. I feel God, and I feel you. And so now I can feel my mom. I can feel her pain. And I can't just tell her work the steps, And so my sister and I took her and my aunt on my mom's dream trip. We took her to Kenya, Africa the next year. And because one of the things, in spite of all this stuff, and you heard me being on Social Security, disability, and food stamps at 12 years sober, but I've ended up having ridiculous success on accident. And I have 3 businesses today, and a couple of them are global, and it's just ridiculous. And I don't ask, because I couldn't tell you. I can't do anything any of them do. I just shoot up and show up and do what you told me to do in AA. I don't know how to run a business. I didn't go to high school, but I do know how to put the traditions into concepts. Like my favorite concept at work is that authority equals responsibility, right? And so it's like, and it's easy. You want to own it, you got it. You can boss it all you want. You don't own it, the minute you don't, it's mine. So anyway, sorry, I digress. So we take my mom and my aunt to Africa, and we were there 2 weeks, and we had a safari, and we did a bunch of stuff in Nairobi, and my mom lit up again. She lit up. She lit up, and I saw her smile, and so for 10 years after that, I've spent lots of time visiting, calling. I talked to her on my way to work in the mornings. And here's what she said. My mom, I've never said this in public because it only happened recently, because my mom trusts me enough. She said, I was afraid you were going to come back and kill us all. She was afraid of me as I was of her. Wow. Because now she's afraid my niece that she raised is going to, so that's how it came out. It didn't just come out to punish me. But my mom, I'll call her and she'll say, I wish I could just talk to you all the time. I feel so much better. Because you taught me. You taught me. She turned 80 during COVID. Man, was she mad. I'm not turning 80. No. I didn't get 79, No, she was really mad. And so I spent months getting friends from around the country and the world. I'm talking about 80-year-olds to do 1-minute videos about my mom and happy things from my mom. I had a full hour's worth of 1-minute videos. And her birthday's 4 days after Christmas, which is depressing enough for her. I've always heard about it. And so I went up there. She lives a couple hours away in Cincinnati. So I go to Cincinnati, and my sister met me there. And I put this thing in. And for the first time in my entire life, I saw my mom cry happy tears. I'd never seen it. I'd seen lots of crying. I've seen lots of angst. When I was 9 years old, she tried to shoot herself in the head. I'd known how painful that her life was, but she cried because she was so happy. She had heart surgery a couple weeks ago. I was, I'm there. I'm there. My dad then went in and had COVID, and I'm there. And then my dad, I think they found bladder cancer because of the COVID. See, there's always a gift, right? And and now my mom's got some other thing. And I'm a good daughter. And you taught me how to love without keeping score. Because see, love is not really love if I have to keep score. And so now they use my words for things. They apologize for things. They never did, you know what I mean? It's like, and I didn't tell, you don't ever get anywhere with your family telling them how to do it. But you get to a lot of places, and it's the same thing with me in AA. I'm not an instructor. I'm a sharer. And when we sit down with the book, I share my experience. I share what I learned. I share what I found. I've had to make a lot of amends to my employees because I felt like such an imposter. I have no business running this. I don't. I really don't. And so when I get afraid and I feel less than, I get controlling. And I get more reactive. And now I've had my business now 21 years. And I'm very proud to say that I have a millennial that's been with me more than 15. My CTO has been with me 17. So sometimes I'm so hard on myself that I only look at, because you taught me, look at my lane. What can I do different? That I lose the evidence of what's really gone right, But the reality is I have had to amend things there. We have such this open, transparent, it's crazy. Like, it's not really real business. It's really like an AA meeting for business. And these kids don't know they're in, like they don't know they're in. Because like this generation, at least in the United States, they have this sense of entitlement, and they've been, everything's, and so we have to talk about responsibility and owning your lane, and you know what I mean? It's like, and so we do all that, and it's beautiful, but sometimes I am over my head. So one of the things I'm trying to do, I didn't know how to get in business, and I know less how to get out. I know how to keep starting them. Apparently that's what ADD does. Let's just start another one. It's a good idea. And so I know that God would have me have less on my plate because it has come to me in meditation for so long. The most of the amends I have to make today are as a result of having too much on my plate. Now understand, I don't care about money. I did, because I had to prove that I wasn't useless because I didn't go to high school. But I don't care. I don't. Money doesn't, it's like, it's invisible, right? It's something, it's like Monopoly. And I don't care about things. And I don't care about the accumulation of things. I did. And then I discovered it doesn't make me happy and actually separates me. It does. It separates me. Having more than you separates me from you sometimes. And I have to work really hard to not. So it's weird. Like the problems become different. The things that look like they were going to solve my problems sometimes become a problem. And I have to figure out how to not let that happen. Now, my sponsor still says, go show God off. That newcomer, man, she's sitting there. She wants to know you can drive a fancy Mercedes, and it's like, I'm like, I'm ready for a pickup truck. But I'm going to talk about other things that are amends. So Bob talked about the takers in Alcoholics Anonymous. I was a taker in Alcoholics Anonymous. I came to Alcoholics Anonymous and I tried to feel better and I didn't give back and I didn't stay sober. Right? That's the big penalty. But my amend now is that I like Sam Shoemaker's Stand by the Door. It's one of my favorite things in life. And so I stand by the door, and when somebody is doing what I was doing and I see them, I go to them. I don't come inside with my little circle. I go to you and I say, come sit with me. I say, you know what I mean? I include you. You may not like it. Many don't. But it is part of my amends to Alcoholics Anonymous, right? It's amends are how I live. I wish I didn't have to keep making them. Bob did just a great job on 6 and 7 where it was just, And that has been my nemesis. It's like, I just can't get there, where I got it all together all the time. It's like, and I think that's how it's supposed to be until I'm dead, so that I keep growing along spiritual lines. The problem is when I do things little or small, and mostly it's little, and see, we get more sensitive. See, this is what happens. As I get more spiritual, my compassion grows. And so something that would have stepped on your toes 10 years ago that I wouldn't have thought nothing of, oh, if that hurt your feelings, your skin is too thin. It's like, now it's like I feel it. And I care very much if I hurt your feelings. I care very much if I cause harm to you, little or small. So the dynamic has changed. I don't do less of it, but I think I do a lot less harm. I know I do a lot less harm. I'm probably only going to talk for a couple more minutes. We've gone over across the board today, and it's really hard for people to sit there for a long time and be hungry. It's just hard, and I don't want that, and I think a short talk is always a good talk. But I will share with you this. The key with all of these things, and here's the truth, none of us have a magic formula, not a one of us. We're not telling you a thing that's not in the book. We talk good. That's what we do. We have big personalities and we talk good. One of the best things that I ever got was when I was a newcomer and I wanted to work the steps so bad. See, I wanted what you had. And I said to Joe, and Joe had been sober a long time, like 2 years. And I said, Joe, I don't think I'm doing the steps right. How do you do the steps? Joe says, and he was older, right? So he said, well, Cyndi, if you really want to work the steps, a parrot can teach you. And it's the truth. Now, I know that because if you think about it, somebody said it yesterday, the big book was your first sponsor. We sent it to people on their own. Now, sponsorship is so critical. I have a sponsor. We are close. Close. I sponsor women. We do it together, but there's not a perfect way. And we don't have a better formula. I don't have a better formula. I'll talk about me. All right? I have a formula that gets talked about in every meeting that is focused on AA literature. It's not talked about in meetings where you just get to bring up a topic very often. But it is most often talked about in STEP and big book meetings and literature meetings. I couldn't read the big book on my own. I went to big book meetings. That's where I learned to read the big book. That's where I learned the big book. I've been sober a long time. My life is completely different than anybody imagined it would be, especially me. The cool thing is, I came into AA, 41 years ago. And many of the people that were there then, that were part of my group, are still alive and we're still in touch. There have been people that have been consistent people every step of my journey, even though I moved to Louisville. Cincinnati kept supporting me, coming up. Really neat. And that's one of the valuable things about that connection is that my reflection in them is pretty cool. Fear's an evil corroding thread. Can't talk about that. I say that all the time. I say it to my employees. It's like when they're getting ready to go into a hard conversation with a client, I say, fear's an evil corroding thread. Don't let it own you. It's like, I'm telling you, I'm a weird business person. But and my employees aren't in recovery. So it's like, it's really weird, right? Don't let it stop you. Get a sponsor that you trust. I could not work with a sponsor that I didn't believe loved me. I couldn't really work with a sponsor that didn't, and I couldn't sponsor somebody. I can't sponsor you for 3 months and not love you. I've never, ever gotten to know somebody's guts, and I don't care what you think of yourself, that I haven't wound up loving a lot, especially the ones that are hard to take their phone calls at first. They end up being my favorites. Find somebody that you trust. Because for me, my first example of that trust with God was in a sponsor, that she loved me enough that she wasn't going to send me down a path that was going to cost me my life or cost me my sobriety and walk me through this amends process. If I don't do the amends, even if I don't drink for some time, I am not going to be happy and I'm not going to be free. And eventually I will drink. This is the real juice. There's a song by Concrete Blonde. I don't know if anybody knows who Concrete Blonde is. It was Joey, I'm not angry, Joey. It's Joey, I'm not angry anymore. And I'm not angry anymore. And it didn't happen till I did this. They read those 9-step promises. They're so limiting. And they didn't sound much like promises to me. Fear of financial insecurity, whoop-de-doo, I don't have any money still. You know what I mean? It's like, what kind of promise is that? I didn't get it. I was too shallow. I was too limited for that to hold any value. Peace? I thought peace would be boring. I didn't know what that meant. Today I have it all. I have it all because of you. Thank you for listening to me. Have a good lunch.